Hey guys, it's Coach Goodrich, back again with another 6th grade Heritage Studies Ancient Civ Cultural Geography video for you guys. This is going to be part 2 of the second chapter of Unit 4, which is going to be the second part of Greece, the last little part of Greece, and we're going to pick up with the philosophers. Now, we already talked a little bit about philosophy, really with the Chinese, people like Confucius and Lao Tzu, and the idea of Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. Really, the birthplace of Western philosophy, what we call it in Europe and the United States, started in Greece, and it started with these three guys. So, not religions, not what you believe, but really the way that you think about the things that you think about. How do you think about the big things in life? So some of these people did not want to rely on religion for answers about the universe. They relied on earthly wisdom, reason, and logic. You can remember them as the Big Three, or SPA, SPA is the acronym. Socrates, then Plato, and then Aristotle. Socrates asked, what is the meaning of life? What makes a good man? Those big kind of questions like that. Taught his students to think for themselves instead of relying on what others told them to think. Believed in the idea of democracy, that people should get to vote and choose for what they want to do and what they want to follow, the laws that they have to, the laws that are enforced, the laws they have to follow, and that right thinking leads to right action. He's known as the father of Western philosophy, and eventually he was sentenced to death for his radical ideas and the rejection of the Greek gods. But he is the guy that kind of started all of this. And we'll read a lot more about him as we're moving on through everything. Plato was a direct student of Socrates. He would write books that he called dialogues, and they're called that way because, like a dialogue is you talking to another person, he drew them up to where he was having arguments with other people in those books. So it was like people talking the whole time, not just him listing out his opinions on things. Stated that the best government was one that was controlled by a small group of the most intelligent people. So given that, he would probably not be super in favor of the idea of democracy. It sounds like more of an oligarchic guy, just from my opinion. But he also taught that the spiritual world of the ideas and of the mind is superior to that of the physical world, and that is what is going to set him mainly apart from the next guy we're going to talk about. Which is Aristotle, the third guy in the chain. He was a direct student of Plato. He's also the personal tutor and teacher of Alexander the Great. A little bit later on, he comes up with the basis for the scientific method that is still used today, with some modifications to it, obviously, but the background behind it he's responsible for coming up with. He taught that reason should help control your behavior, that your logic, your common sense should control your emotion. And he also taught that the physical world, the world around you, the secular world, was more important than the spiritual world. And there's a very famous painting that demonstrates this that we will get to. Boom. So this painting is actually done by Michelangelo, and it's called the Academy. The Academy was the main institution of learning, of higher learning in ancient Greece. It was in the city of Athens. Plato and Aristotle both taught there, both worked there, both were students there before founding. Aristotle was there before founding his own school, before going off to be a tutor. But this is Plato, and this is Aristotle. Look, in the right here, in the middle of everything. Notice what Plato's hand is pointing up to the sky, while Aristotle's hand is facing the ground. Remember, Plato, spiritual world, the ideas of the mind, everything up here, the heavens, spiritual world, more important than what is going on around them in the physical world. Aristotle, the opposite, believed that the physical world is where the focus is. So this is what helps me remember what they thought about and why. Further education. Boys from wealthy families had to go to school from the ages of 6 to 14. They were taught reading, writing, arithmetic, grammar, music, and athletics, of course. Literature. The epics. Homer wrote 2 long poems called the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad recounts the story of the Trojan War, which for a long time was seen to be as kind of a myth until recent archaeological evidence has pointed that Troy may have actually existed. The Odyssey recounts Odysseus, one of the Greek generals, his 10-year journey home from the war. They're seen as kind of like the preeminent epic poems ever written. We get a lot of ideas about war and love and heroes in the Western culture from this romanticized version of that. Aesop would write many fables. and plays, both comedies and tragedies, were performed in amphitheaters. Back then, comedy and tragedy didn't necessarily mean, you know, what we think of today. Today, when we think of comedies, we think of like a Will Ferrell movie. Something that's going to make you laugh. It might not be super smart, but it's easy to follow. Back then, comedy just meant the story ended happily, while tragedies obviously did not. You got Homer, and you got Aesop. Interesting looking fellows. Of course, the story of the Trojan horse, very important to the story of the Iliad. And then Odysseus, Achilles, those Greek myths pop up in this time. Advances in math and science. Archimedes invented the lever and pulley system. Euclid studied and wrote about modern geometry. In fact, most textbooks about this subject are called Euclidean geometry because of him. And then Hippocrates is the father of medicine and made many contributions to modern medicines. In fact, today, if you are a doctor or a nurse, you go into the healthcare field, you're required to take what is called the Hippocratic Oath after him. Athletics and music. The Greeks taught that developing the body was just as important as developing the mind. They used this as an outlet for the Olympic Games, the ancient Olympic Games, which featured such things as wrestling, running, discus toss, javelin throw, long jumps, etc. The basis for the modern Olympics that's restarted in the 1890s. Apollo was the god of music, as we've seen before, and the Muses were the 9 specific goddesses that ruled over each of the 9 specific arts, and they're listed down here. This is the Olympic Stadium that started in, I think it was the 2000 Olympics in Athens, the first time it came back to Greece in a very long time. The symbol of the Olympics, and then the different muses and the things that they're responsible for. Art and architecture, probably the most famous things of architecture, examples of architecture that have been left behind by the Greeks, because we see them copied throughout classical and neoclassical architecture, are the columns. They were not the first people to use columns, but they definitely perfected them in the mathematical and beautification sense. Ionic columns are easy to tell. They have scrolls at the top. Doric columns are very plain at the top, and Corinthian columns are very elaborate at the top. So let's take a look. Boom. So we got Ionic with the scrolls. This is at the Supreme Court building in the United States. Doric columns are very plain. These are found at the Parthenon overlooking the city of Athens. And these are Corinthian columns, very leafy, kind of flowery looking, very ornate and fancy. This is found at the Pantheon in Rome, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. The spread of Greek culture. 338 BC, Greece was taken over by Philip II of Macedonia, who is the father of Alexander the Great. And then after his father's passing, using the Greek army, Alexander conquered more than half the known world, spreading the Hellenistic or Greek culture, the Greek language, which is why the New Testament is written in Greek, and their ideas of philosophy and religion. Most of this empire would eventually be conquered by the Romans after his untimely death, who would embrace many aspects of the Greek and Hellenistic culture. When I say embrace, I mean just kind of take them and change the names around a little bit. This was the ending empire of Alexander the Great. Cool. All right. Guys, go ahead and complete the mini quiz. Be ready to complete that on Google Classroom for your grade as well. And look forward to discussing this with you guys very soon. Have a good one.